This is an insane story. You guys, I want you to watch this whole thing all the way until the end. Stay to the end for an important message and a surprise message. Stay to the end. All right, let's do it. Today's story is one of a man who spent 23 years on death row for a crime that he did not commit. Facing the electric chair, scared every day. His mother, his friends, everybody that knew him, believing that he was this criminal that he really wasn't. Good morning, my lovelies, my beauties, my friends. My name is Christina and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, thank you so much for clicking on this video. I really hope that you will subscribe, stick around, take a chance on hearing some things that I have to say. And if you are a returning subscriber, y'all already know, y'all are my babies. So good morning, good morning, good morning. How is everybody doing today? I hope you all are having an amazing day. Me, I am doing much better. For everybody that knows, I was very sick last week. Today is actually day 7, and although I'm not feeling nauseous or dizzy, I'm still not like back to my normal self. I still feel a little, you know, when you're coming out of a cold or a flu or something, and even though you're not like in the like sickness anymore, you still kind of just don't feel like yourself. That's where I'm at. Thanks for asking. If any of you guys are like actually curious or interested in hearing like how I got sick, why I got sick, check out my other channel, Casually Christina. There's a video titled Why I Got Sick or How I Got Sick or whatever it is, and that will tell you. So a lot of you guys have been requesting that I do true crime videos and just kind of like tell you guys the stories like a story. I've got some good ones coming up for y'all, so everybody just hang tight, be patient with me because they are coming. Another thing is, for everybody that's been requesting for my second and third parts of my Ed story, it will be coming as well. You guys just got to give me some time. That is literally the deepest, darkest, most draining subject that I have ever or will ever have to talk about. And it takes a lot out of me, so it's gonna be a little while. So you guys just be patient, and thank you for that. Alrighty, today's story is about Nick Yaris. Back in the 1980s, Nick Yaris was arrested for a crime that he did not commit. He was actually out driving a stolen car. Now let me tell you guys about Nick. Nick grew up with a crazy life. He was actually attacked when he was a younger guy and really brutally beaten in his head. He had like head issues and stuff like that. And back in the 80s, you know, we didn't talk about a lot of things like we do now. There's not a lot of research. And so he was trying to self-medicate with substances like a lot of addicts do. They self-medicate to try to make themselves feel better, and he was doing the same thing. He got into like stealing cars and stuff like that, and one night he was out driving a stolen car when he gets pulled over by an officer. Rear, lights go on behind him. He's looking in the rear view mirror and he's freaking out. The cop comes up, starts asking him questions, and Nick wasn't really complying, so the cop got mad. This was a huge cop. The cop rips the car door open, rips him out, slamming him around, like abusing him and all of that, throws him in the back of the cop car. The cop takes Nick to jail and tells the other officers and stuff that Nick tried to kill him, which Nick obviously did not, but you know, the officer just said whatever he wanted to say. So now Nick is 20 years old. He had been arrested before as a younger guy for like stealing cars and stuff, but nothing really serious. But now he's in jail facing life for trying to kill an officer. So he's scared. He's kind of freaking out. He's whatever. He's in jail, and now he's facing big boy charges for something he actually didn't do. And he's sitting in jail and he reads this article. He reads this newspaper article about a woman named Linda who had been brutally ape with an R, and murdered. And so he gets this bright idea. He says to himself, I'm going to tell the cops that I know who did this. That way I can bargain and try to get my way out of these charges that I have so I can get out. So he comes up with this idea and he picks a guy's name that he thought had passed away. So he says, I'm going to tell them that this guy who's dead did it, and I know he did it, and this is how I know. So he gets into the room with the investigators, and he starts telling the investigators about this guy. He's like, yeah, he did it. I know all this for sure. Da, 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 da. Well, the investigators go to investigate this guy and come to find out he was still alive. And not only was he still alive, but he had already gotten his life together. He was clean. He was working a job and everything. So they start fact checking and find out that the guy that Nick accused of doing this crime was actually at work the night that Linda was brutally murdered. So they came back to Nick and they're like, you did it. You're the one that did it. So now they pin these charges on Nick. Nick goes to trial for this crime that he also did not commit himself. And he says he remembers sitting in the courtroom and seeing the jury looking at him, old neighbors, friends, family members in there staring him down with the most disgusting look, like he was just this horrible person. He said even people that babysat him as a kid sitting in the courtroom scowling at him, looking at him crazy. And he takes it to trial and he loses. Guilty. Guilty is the answer of the jury. And now he is sentenced to death. Death? Oh my gosh, death? The electric chair. So he gets shipped off to prison and is on death row. Now as he sits in a 6 by 10 foot concrete cell with just a mattress and a pillow, a dictionary, and one picture. That one picture was of him. He sits in there for the first 2 years on death row. He experienced a lot of beatings, a lot of mistreatment from the officers. Crazy, crazy stuff. The officers would pin them against each other, the inmates, put them in small cells and make them fight each other, or they would get beat up by the officers. And when the officers were not interacting with the people on death row, they were not allowed to speak. So for the first 2 years of him being on death row of a crime he could not commit, he's sitting in this little 6 by 10 cell and he cannot speak. He's not allowed to say a word. He's not allowed to communicate. Like, can you just imagine being in a little cell for something that you did not do and not even being allowed to talk for 2 years? Well, Nick had this picture on his wall, taped on his wall or stuck to his wall, however, of himself. And he decided that he was going to start talking to himself. See, before this, Nick had a speech impediment or a stuttering issue, and he didn't speak very well, so he didn't sound very intelligent. So he started studying the dictionary while he was in there, waiting to die. Studying the dictionary, studying each word so he could teach himself how to talk. And his plan by doing this was that way when he was executed, he could give the most beautiful speech for himself. Can you imagine? That was his thought. In 1985, Nick was being transported to court. He was in this transportation van and he had 2 officers with him. Now, in the middle of this transportation, they stopped at a store to use the bathroom. So they had Nick in his handcuffs and one officer takes him to the bathroom, and see what had happened was the bathroom was like outside the little convenience store, and you had to hold the door open with your foot in order to see in there. You couldn't just like leave the door wide open. One of the officers was actually pumping gas, and the other officer takes him to the bathroom and is holding the door open with his foot. Nick's in there in his handcuffs, you know, doing what he's got to do, go into the bathroom. And then the other officer says, now I've got to go. So Nick comes out and Nick is getting ready to walk back to the van where the other officer is pumping the gas. And then the officer that was holding the door goes in, the door shuts behind him, and he uses the bathroom. Well, as he's walking back to the van, the other officer that's pumping the gas looks up at him and sees him walking without an officer. Immediately, that officer thinks that Nick has hurt the other officer. So he draws his gun and starts shooting at Nick. So Nick is in his handcuffs and he starts running. He ends up running and somehow escaping. Now, see, back in the 80s, it's not like it is now. You know, now there's cameras everywhere, there's fingerprint, there's DNA, there's all of this stuff and ways to track people. But back then, it wasn't like that. Nick ended up staying on the run for over a month, you guys. A month. And then he just got tired of running and he turned himself in. I mean, there was a nationwide hunt on him, but he still managed to stay gone for a month. But when he turned himself in, it didn't get any easier for him. Those officers were mad. They wanted his head. He remembers being taken into a room, a white room with 4 officers, and they beat him with clubs for 4 minutes. And 4 minutes may not seem like a long time, but when you are being beaten with a club, 4 clubs, 4 officers for 4 minutes, it did a lot of damage to him. They broke 12 of his teeth. They broke his face. They detached his left retina in his eye, and it took him months to recover. Later on, while he was on death row, he actually started trying to help other inmates get off of death row. Just, you know, he was really just trying to do good while he was in there. He knew he was like sentenced to die. He was getting ready to die at any time. But as the years passed, I mean, he spent 23 years on death row, waiting to die with other inmates that were waiting to die. During this time when he was studying like his case and stuff, like he had actual evidence that he was in a different place than the woman Linda was whenever she was murdered, but it just kept getting thrown out. Like the courts just kept losing it somehow, some way. And every time Nick thought that he was going to get to go to court and fight his case and get out, something would happen. And he just began to really lose hope. He began to lose hope that he was ever going to be able to get out. And the thing that Nick said bothered him the most was his mother. Like his mother would get excited thinking that he was going to go to court and, you know, show the evidence of the receipt of where he was, and, you know, people that actually said they saw him in a different place than Linda was at the scene of the crime, and all of this stuff. And it just kept getting messed up somehow. And his mom, it was just breaking his heart. So eventually what Nick did was he wrote a letter to the judge and said, I'm ready. I'm ready to be executed now. And then the judge, it sparked the judge's interest. Like, wait a minute, this guy who has been fighting for over 20 years, trying to get out of here, is now wants to die. So then the judge had a light bulb that went off. The judge said, I want to look further into this. Right around this time, DNA evidence became a thing. Nick Yaris was actually the first person to have DNA evidence done like this. When the DNA test was finally done and it came back that the person that actually harmed Linda was not Nick, he was freed. But he was freed after 23 years of severe abuse. Like, can you imagine what that would do to a person? Like, I know still to this day what 3 years did to me in prison. And I wasn't even like physically abused while I was in there. I just, you know, getting out after 23 years, he went in the 80s and came out in the 2000s. I mean, life changes so much after that. You know, like new roads, new buildings, new businesses, smartphones, you know, laptops, all kinds of stuff that he had never seen before. And now he's out trying to make a new life for himself. He seems to be doing really good now. I will tell you guys that if you get some free time, you should watch the Netflix documentary on him. It's actually very good, and he's really, really good at telling his story. He also has a book, which I will leave linked below if you guys want to check that out. But other than that, let me know what you guys think. Have you heard this story? Have you heard of anybody else's story? Do you like me doing videos like this? Is there other things that you want me to talk about, other stories that you want me to tell? I am still very, very, very closely following the Amber Geiger, Botham Jean case. Supposedly next week, the trial will be over, and yes. So I want to tell you guys some more stuff that I've heard or how I feel, but I'm going to wait for a video on that all on its own. So other than that, thank you guys for watching this video. Please don't forget to like it. It's a free way that you can help your girl out. And until next time, I love you guys so, so, so very much, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye. Okay, you guys, I have actually been talking to Nick Yaris myself. Me and him are going to do an interview. He's going to tell you guys some of the stuff that happened in his own words and also answer y'all's questions. So if you have any questions for him, leave them down below. Nick is in actually a not great place. You guys are going to be shocked to hear all that he's been through, including doing all of that with Netflix for the documentary on Netflix, and did not receive a dime, according to his own words. You guys, he's been struggling. He's been through a lot. You can only imagine. So you guys, if you have any questions, leave them down below. Stay tuned, because I will be having an exclusive interview for between me and him for you guys, so stick around. All right, like the video. Love you, and I'll see you guys soon.